Hello again. With our dry point plates, when we print them, we're going to print them on paper that's larger than the plate. And so to figure out the way to register the plate to the paper, we're going to create something called a registration guide. I have my plates here I'm going to use to trace onto the newsprint that will form our registration guide. And I have two different size plates. One is 3.5 inches by 6 inches and one is 4 by 6 inches. So I'm going to make a registration guide for each of those plate sizes. My paper size is 5 by 7 inches, so I'll have a 1/2 inch margin all the way around on the 4 by 6 inch plate. And on the plate that's 3.5 by 6 inches, I'll weight the bottom so it has a 1 inch margin. I made sure that my newsprint is smaller than the width of my press, which is 6 inches wide. To begin, I'm going to roughly center the plate on the newsprint. To make it easier for all of you to see, I'm using a micron pen, but a pencil works just fine for this. Notice how I'm trying to keep the pen right up against the edge of the plate. From here, I'm going to take a ruler and measure out a 1/2 inch on either side of the plate. Now we have the tracing of the plate and the tracing of the paper. We're going to go one farther step and add something called T-bar registration to our registration template. For T-bar registration, on the short edge of each side of the template, I'm going to mark the halfway point. And I'll use a ruler to connect these 2 points together. And I'll repeat then on my 3.5 by 6 inch plate. T-bar registration will allow us to precisely lay down our paper onto the template and also to precisely lay down our plate onto the template so that when the plate and paper go through the printing press, the image ends up exactly where we want it on the paper surface. This is also very helpful if you plan on doing multi-plate registration, so if you plan on having more than one plate in order to create your image. With T-bar registration, you'll begin by having all of your paper cut down to the same size. You'll need a pencil, preferably an HB or a 2H, and a straight edge. To start, we're going to stagger our printing paper. Notice I have it staggered. And there's about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch visible for each piece of paper. I have them stacked so the back is facing up and the bottoms are all aligned. If there's any variation in width, you'll want to make sure that you center justify the paper so the variation is even on either side. Next, you're going to make marks on the top sheet of paper, marking the center of both the top and the bottom. Take your sharpened pencil and drag it along the ruler so it marks every piece of paper that's visible at the bottom of the stack, and also mark the top edge on the top piece of paper. Next, you're going to stagger the paper in the other direction. With your paper staggered in the opposite direction, you can see that the top piece of paper has already been marked. So with this method, you only need to measure the top piece once, and after that, it's using a straight edge to connect those 2 marks. lastly, you'll draw a crossbar at the top edge. With T-bar registration, you'll be able to precisely lay down your paper on top of your printing plate so that the image lands exactly where you want it. And if you have multiple plates you're printing in registration, you'll also be able to use this as a guide for placing the subsequent plates down on the template for printing and having the plates end up in perfect registration with one another. With T-bar registration, you'll first lay your printing plate down onto the template, and after that you'll lay down your paper, floating the top edge until it lines up exactly on the crossbar. You'll hold down the paper once you get the vertical edge aligned for the T, and then float it down until the bottom also matches. So the crossbar lets you know how far up or down to lay your paper, and the vertical line lets you know how far left and right to lay your paper. With our plates made, our paper marked, and a registration guide created, we're ready to go to printing.